Hey and welcome back to the Review Tuesday. My name's Ruben and this is my spoiler review and breakdown of episode 2 of The Last of Us. So if you don't want any spoilers, then this is not the place for you. This is the place for you if you've watched the episode, you want to give your thoughts down below, or you want to kind of hear a breakdown of it, you're excited to talk about it in the comments. Let's go. Let's do this. Episode 2 starts like episode 1, which I was really happy with. It gives a little bit more kind of background story. We start in Jakarta where the initial outbreak supposedly started. We see Ibu Ratna. She is the professor of mycology. She's taken from a cafe and just kind of taken by the army. She's shown something in a microscope. She looks at it. The cordyceps supposedly cannot survive in humans, but as she goes and inspects a human in a little zipped up hoodie, she sees that it does. She freaks out, and then the army guy says to her, right, so we need an antibody, we need a vaccine, we need some medicine. What can we do about this? And she's freaking out with her cup of tea, and she says, bomb the place. And even though she knows that that's going to kill herself, bomb the whole city, because she understands that this infection, there is nothing. Which is such a good intro to this episode. Episode 2, called Infected, 55 minutes long, directed by Neil Druckmann. And it shows us how important the Ellie character is going to be. Now, coming off the real hardship of episode 1, of Joel losing his daughter, jumping 20 years forward, setting up that world, seeing what it's like, being introduced to the Fireflies. This is where we now find ourselves when we eventually get past the intro. The intro, can we just take a second to talk about how great the intro? We have the original composer back doing, I think, the same score, but kind of rehashing and doing it again. And the artwork for that whole intro is just beautiful, kind of setting up that tone, finishing with the silhouette of Joel and Ellie. Love it. It's amazing. And so really the kind of opening shot, once we get past that intro before the credits roll, is Ellie curled up in the glass, kind of like in a fetus position. And it's really an interesting shot to start off with. It's aesthetically pleasing with the grass and the vibrant color inside the building with the grass there, and she is like a baby, you know, all of that kind of conjures up the fetal position. She is helpless, unprotected in that moment. And then we see Joel and Tess kind of with their guns kind of deciding whether she is infected, what to do with her, do they carry on with the mission? And there's this whole discussion around it. And this is what I really liked about this episode, is the banter between Joel, Tess, and Ellie feels really real. It feels like it would happen naturally. The dialogue is such that you believe the characterizations of that moment. And if you played the game, you understand a lot of that stuff, that what we've heard in the dialogue is transposed quite well, but they're also doing their own thing with it because obviously it is a series and not a game. And this is where the viewer and Ellie is introduced to the overgrown world. The skyscrapers kind of, you know, broken down, the buildings decrepit, but with that vegetation all growing. And aesthetically, again, it's phenomenal to look at. And then we go into some of those buildings, you know, the set dressing for them, seeing the moss grow all over the glasses like just still set on the tables, and then we see the cars all kind of grown over with moss. So we have a post-apocalyptic world, but a vegetation world that's taken over it, and it just kind of lends you into thinking, I wonder if, like, even if I touch this thing, I will get infected, because everything is now about the world reclaiming itself, as well as the fungus of zombies. What I'd like to do with each of these episode kind of breakdown and reviews is talk about my favorite moment in the episode and my favorite dialogue line. And so my favorite moment in this episode is when the frog is playing piano. And I think for fans, they'll love that moment inside the building. Again, beautiful cinematography, vibrant colors, as well as just airy at the same time. And then we see that, you know, the world is still surviving somehow, even amongst zombies. We have the ducks swimming in the water. We have that frog. So there's life, but humans are in the minority, no longer really the top of the food chain. Ellie gets a bit schooled into how long the infected last. Tess is trying to teach her, get her to be able to be in a place to understand what she needs to survive, giving us a bit of information, the viewer, that infected, some of them can last 20 years long. This is where we see our first horde, and they're all lying on the ground, all connected, a bit more information saying that even if you touch one, that it's a mile away, they're all kind of connected like the roots of a tree. So if you touch one, you can wake all of them up, and that is like a hive mind mentality. which is scary when you think you hurt one, you hurt many, and you don't want a horde running at you. One of the things I loved about the first game as well is when Ellie keeps asking for a gun. And there's kind of those nods to the fan with the games. I think they continue to establish that, you know, it was a game first. But also for those that don't know, you know, Ellie asking for a gun. She doesn't have a gun in the game for a while until she's ready, really. Until the circumstance calls for it. So because of this horde, they have to go into a building that they don't want to. The short way rather than the long way. And this is where I think a lot of fans, if you've seen the trailer, you're introduced to your first clicker. And Man Alive did the artwork and the art team. I mean, they've been phenomenal in this, just the set dressing. But the makeup design, the prosthetic makeup, so creepy and so well done that they're building tension with lighting, cinematography, and sound. And then we get that physical reaction where they have to fight in a way with those clickers using the sound. And that's exactly, if you took a comparison of the bit of the game and a bit of the TV series in those moments, there's quite a bit of correlation there, which made me really happy. Joel has such an intense scene of reloading his gun. It's one of the most intense scenes of a gun reload I've seen in a long time, where he's having to do it really quietly. He's shaking out the bullets and he's having to put them in while a clicker is listening. If he makes the slightest sound, it's going to come for him. Really tense moment. Even though I know he's in like the rest of the series, you still are scared for him, and that's some great tension creating, great storytelling. When they eventually get to the building where the Fireflies are meant to be, they're all dead, and they find out that one of them's been bitten in the neck, and they obviously shot each other because they got infected, and so their plan goes to poop. It's also where we find out that Tess was bitten, and she's going to stay because Joel wakes up the horde. The horde is coming for them. Ellie screams saying, you know, let go of me, we're not going to leave Tess, but Joel knows after Tess pleads that you must do this one thing for me. Tess kind of gives her life to save them by blowing up the building, and it's a really heart-wrenching moment. I loved her character, what we knew from her in season 1. I mean, I love the actress herself, but sorry, in episode 1 and episode 2, I just wish we could have had more of her, but that's not her story. It's Joel and Ellie's story, and along the way you're going to meet characters. Not all of them are going to die. There's just some characters you're going to love, but it's not really sticking with them because it's Joel and Ellie's story. And so we are left kind of hanging after the devastation, surviving the horde, being introduced to what the world is actually like. It's horrific, and if you survive day to day, it is one of those things. And that's exactly what the game is like. At least in the game you can do, you know, like a restart and learn and collect things and build things, but here in the series, you know, you don't have that ability to help them kind of figure out what's going on. It's just as the directors directed the episode. And so now we have to wait for next week's episode. If you want to hear my full review of the season without spoilers, it's on my channel right now. Suffice to say, I like this episode, but it does feel like we're left hanging a little bit in episode 2, especially if you have to wait for the next week's episode. I can't wait to see what everybody thinks about episode 4. Episode 3 is a doozy. Every episode is excellent, but the pace in episode 4 is really different. So let me know your favorite moment in this episode. What did you think of the clickers? What did you think of the relationship between Joel, Ellie, and Tess? I thought it was fantastic. Score, music, cinematography, art design, all fantastic. Thanks so much for watching, but most of all, until next time, remember, live long and Tuesday.